works. Okay, good morning. Good to be together. And if it's okay with you, what we're going to do, I guess it's okay because that's what I prepared. What we're going to do today is we're going to continue. If you remember 2 weeks ago when we last met, it was the week of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel's 50th yahrzeit. And if it's okay with you, I mean, he's pretty much like the major Jewish thinker from the last 100 years. So what I wanted to do was actually make our way through a lesser known piece by him. He has, many grand, incredible writings that are studied regularly, like the Sabbath and some of his other pieces. But I wanted to make our way through a piece which is less known. It's called "The Earth is the Lord's." Anyone read that one cover to cover before? It's an essay. Actually, the Sabbath itself is just a long essay. "The Earth is the Lord's" is a long essay, and I wanted to read it together today, pieces of it together today for a specific reason. It is his writing. If you remember his story, just the 10-second version. Rabbi Heschel grew up in a very Hasidic family, following the lines of a great Hasidic rabbi, the Apter Rav, who also was the same name, Abraham Joshua Heschel. That was his grandfather. And he grew up in Warsaw, and for the first 15 years of his life had a very traditional Hasidic upbringing, just went to Cheder, yeshiva, and was ordained as a rabbi by the age of 16. Then he was open to secular studies and began secular studies and university studies. And then he made his way as a teacher, and he taught with Buber in Germany in the 30s. And he was able to escape Germany just as the Nazis, they were already in power, but just as things were getting really bad, through London, on the way to first Cincinnati at Hebrew Union College and then New York at Jewish Theological Seminary. He left Europe in 1940. So he was able to flee Nazi Germany. This week, as you probably know, is International Holocaust Remembrance Day on January 27th, which marks the day of the liberation of Auschwitz. It's a day that the world, or the UN, formally remembers the Holocaust. Of course, for us, it's Yom HaShoah, which is the date was set by the Knesset originally, and that's the date of the end of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. For us, for Jews, we decided not to remember the Holocaust in the day when the world came to save us, theoretically, when the liberators came and liberated Auschwitz, but it's a day of when Jews fought back against the Nazis around the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. The book that we're going to look at, or the long essay that we're going to look at, "The Earth is the Lord's," was Heschel's poetic essay on life in Europe pre-Holocaust and what was lost. And the culture, the tradition, the life of Europe that he grew up in, and what he distilled from it, and how he wants it to be remembered. I thought it would be fitting, again, as we're marking an important date on the world calendar about Holocaust Remembrance Day, to focus on Eastern European life and Heschel's view of it. So I need a reader. We're actually going to sort of make our way through the essay. I have it up on my Kindle, so we're going to sort of read from my Kindle website. Anyone, if you want to raise your hand, anyone want to be some readers? Remember, Heschel is very poetic. And remember, English was like his third or fourth language. So that's also he was incredibly intelligent. He only spoke Yiddish originally, and then I'm sure Polish and German, and I'm sure many other languages, and then English, later on in his life. Anyone want to be a reader today? I see Lynn, because she's not playing pickleball. Anyone else? There you go. Arda and Sherry and Marvin. All right, we got lots of readers today. Good. Okay. All right, we'll start with Lynn, and let's pull it up. Marvin. Okay. So I'll just show you the book cover, and hopefully those on, if you can see the screen, you don't need to, but we'll see. I'll share the screen. We're going to do a lot of screen share today, if that's okay. You just go to the cover. So This is not a very exciting cover. My version is a little bit more exciting. This is the one that's on Kindle. I guess the title page, Earth is the Lord's, The Inner World of the Jew in Eastern Europe by Abram Joshua Heschel. He wrote it in 1945. And that's a really important year, especially if we're talking about Eastern European life and the Holocaust. So again, this is sort of, and you can just see, look at the chapter. Can you see the screen with the chapter titles? The Sigh,
Yes.
With All My Heart, The Two Great Traditions. He actually compares Ashkenazi versus Sephardic, which is an interesting comparison he makes. For the people, the luxuries of learning. Pupil. Anyone know what pupil is?
Sounds familiar, but I don't know what it is.
Anyone know? Pupil is a specific way of studying Talmud. Pupil is like exacting study that was famous in the yeshivas in Europe. And that was the difference. If you know the differences between the Megnadim and the Hasidim or the Litvaks, this was the Litvak way of study, which was every single word. They spent hours drilling down on every word of the Talmud, and why it was used, the nuances of the word. It's a very focused, slow learning. Pupil is every single word focused on. The deed sings, devout men of Ashkenaz, Kabbalah, Hasidism, love the wicked, the Lamed Vavniks, the 36 righteous people, guard my tongue from evil, the untold stories. So we're going to look at sort of pieces of this. So let me move you guys this way. All right, Lynn, you ready to read?
I'm ready.
Let me see where we're going to read from. So just, we're going to just do a moment of just to read his, this was Heschel's opening. Remember, 1945, very important year. He just came to America, a couple years in, just learning English. Okay, go ahead.
The story about the life of the Jews in Eastern Europe, which has come to an end in our days, is what I have tried to tell in this essay. I have not talked about their books, their art, or institutions, but about their daily life, about their habits and customs, about their attitudes toward the basic things in life, about the scale of values which directed their aspirations.
One more paragraph.
It is a story about an entire era in Jewish history, in which the attempt is made to portray the character of a people as reflected in its way of living throughout generations, in its loyalties and motivations, in its unique and enduring features. Viewed from a wide historical perspective, issues that loomed important in recent years were considered only in proportion to the total picture of the Ashkenazic period, which extended over 800 years.
Okay, I'm going to pause here, right? So, right, remember, he just left Europe. He left Europe as it was basically being destroyed. The Europe that he knew, the Eastern Europe that he knew, was being destroyed, right? And basically what he's saying is, right, we have lost 800 years of culture. 800 years of the Jewish story, right, is gone. That's where he's coming from, right? So again, now I want to pause for a second before we go into the book. What's happening in Eastern Europe today? Right? You may have heard of the stories of the revival of Judaism in Eastern Europe, right? We brought in speakers into our own shul to talk about the revival of Eastern Europe, right? Whether it's in Poland or different places. Obviously, we're taking the war in Ukraine sort of out of the picture, which is sort of, obviously affected the revival of Judaism in certain places. But right, remember, we're now 80 years later, right? So, that's sort of where we're at. Okay, so we're going to jump in the book, if that's okay. I just got to find where I want to start. And anybody can mute and ask any questions, okay? Okay. It's also really pretty wood, these wood cuts. Is that what that's called? It's really nice art here. Goes on tight.
Sorry, I thought I was muted.
You're all good. We didn't hear a thing. Okay, let me just see where we should start. Or with all thy heart. Okay, so basically, what I skipped a bunch of pages already, is, he's talking about like a true devoted Jew and what a true devoted Jew is supposed to do. And now he's going to talk about like really what it takes to be a good Jew. So a person, if you can see a person.
You want me to continue or someone else?
Yes, you.
Oh, okay. Me. A person scrupulously exact in observing the established rules and standards was considered to be a good Jew, but only one who went beyond that which the law required would approach the extraordinary. Saintliness was not thought to consist in specific acts, such as in excessive prayer or performance of rituals, but was an attitude bound up with all actions, concomitant with all doings, accompanying and shaping all life's activities. Saintliness was not an excursion into spirituality. Its mark was loving kindness. A saint was he who did not know how it is possible not to love, not to help, not to be sensitive to the anxiety of others. Rabbi Israel Salanter, renowned thinker and founder of the moralist movement, died in a foreign country.
I just want to pause for a second. Yeah. Right, when he writes there's moralist movement, you may have heard the term Musar. It's like a big thing now, spiritual ethics. Musar, that's the Hebrew translation of moralist movement. So Rabbi Israel Salanter, the founder of Musar. All right, go ahead. Away from his numerous admirers and disciples, okay.
And disciples, only a very plain man who took care of him while he was sick was present when he passed away. Eager to learn what legacy of profound ideas the great scholar expounded in his last hours, the disciples questioned the attendant. All evening, the attendant told them, he tried to convince me that I should not be afraid to be left alone all night with the body of a dead man. For these people, Jewishness was more than a set of beliefs and rituals, more than what was compressed into tenets and rules. Jewishness was not in the fruit, but in the sap that stirred through the tissues of the tree. Bred in the silence of the soil, it ascended to the leaves to become eloquent in the fruit. Jewishness was not only truth, it was vitality, joy, to some, the only joy. The intellectual majesty of the Shema Israel, when translated into the language of their hearts, signified it is a joy to be a Jew.
I won't pause you here. Really, I want to focus on this last paragraph. Reactions, thoughts, do you agree? Do you think that this talks about Jews today? Us today, our community today?
Hard to find.
Remember, this is nostalgia. I mean, he's talking about literally a civilization that was destroyed by the Nazi, right? This is writing in 1945, right? So there's some bit of nostalgia going on here, but what do you think? Very powerful, right? Jewishness was not in the fruit, but in the sap that stirred through the tissues of our trees. Right? It ascended to the leaves to become elephant. Jewishness was not only truth, it was vitality, joy, and to some, the only joy they had in their lives, right? Shema Yisrael translates into the language of their hearts It is a joy to be a Jew. Beautiful, right? Really
Yeah, you
powerful.
looked at their life. Their life was all in little Jewish communities. They
Hmm.
didn't have any outside affiliations. Their life was all Jewish communities. The only association they had with non-Jews was basically in business world or
Hmm.
in doing something else, but not in their everyday life versus what we see today and
Hmm.
what we live today.
We're actually going to go right. That's actually the next thing because now he's going to start comparing his, his take on Sephardic Jewry versus Ashkenazic Jewry, and he's actually going to make that point in a minute. Any other one want to comment on this section that Lynn just read?
I thought it was interesting. Talked about saintliness because oftentimes I've had friends say to me, "Oh, you're the first Jewish saint." That's what I've done.
Yeah,
And it's like
yeah,
you don't usually see that.
yeah. So what? How did he define saintliness?
Rabbi, is he assuming keeping all of the mitzvot as a
Yes.
standard, and
Yes,
that this is
he's already assuming everybody's. And in fact, if you caught that, what he said was, I could show you if you want, but I'll just tell you. Right? He said is a person scrupulously observes all the established rules and standards to be considered a good Jew, right? So everybody's already following the law. And then he says, right, that you should go beyond the letter of the law. Right. So he's saying even like all the more so. Yeah. You're definitely already following all the mitzvot.
so the behavior has to follow after the mitzvot,
Right. This is on top of doing mitzvahs.
not instead of.
In Heschel's view of the saint in Eastern Europe. Yeah. Right. I'm not this book and this writing just focused on life in the shtetl. Yeah. Any other comments before we move forward? Okay. Let's get to our second reader. Arda, you there?
Yes.
Okay, let me give you. So we're going to look at his take on the difference between Sephardic and Ashkenazic Jews. And like there's a lot, but I'm jumping around. So if you want to start, if you see the bottom of the page, the intellectual life.
The intellectual life of the Jews in Spain was deeply influenced by the surrounding world. Literary forms, scientific methods, philosophical categories, and even theological principles were often adopted from the Arabs. Stimulated and enriched in their writing and thinking by foreign patterns, Jewish authors were inclined to stress the basic agreements between the doctrine of their faith and the theories of great non-Jewish thinkers. Indeed, they often seem to emphasize the elements Judaism had in common with the classical philosophy to the neglect of pointing out its own specific features. They were under constant challenge and attack by members of other creeds and felt compelled to debate and to defend the principles of their faith.
All right, so in general, right, he's saying here Sephardic Jews were deeply influenced by those around, and it was always sort of in either working together or in conflict with the outside world, and they had to keep defining themselves and expressing themselves. Now he's going to say, and how is that different than the Ashkenazic Jews living in the shtetl? Go ahead.
In the Ashkenazic period, the spiritual life of the Jews was lived in isolation. Accordingly, it grew out of its own ancient roots and developed in an indigenous environment, independent of the trends and conventions of the surrounding world. Intellectually more advanced than their average Germanic and Slavic neighbors, the Jews unfolded unique cultural patterns in thinking and writing in their communal and individual ways of life. Tenaciously adhering to their own traditions, they concentrated upon the cultivation of what was most their own, what was most specific and personal. They borrowed from other cultures neither substance nor form. What they wrote was literature created by Jews, about Jews, and for Jews. They apologized to no one, neither to philosophers nor theologians, nor did they ask the commendation of either prince or penman. They felt no need to compare themselves with anyone else, and they wasted no energy in refuting hostile opinions.
Keep going.
There in Eastern Europe, the Jewish people came into its own. It did not live like a guest in somebody else's house who must constantly keep in mind the ways and customs of the host. The Jews lived without reservation and without disguise, outside their homes no less than within them. When they used the phrase, the world asks, in their commentaries on the Talmud, they did not refer to a problem raised by Aristotle or
Whoever that
Averroes.
is.
Yeah, their fellow students of Torah were to them the world.
Okay, I'm going to pause here. So can you see the delineation Heschel's making? And again, like he's probably biased. I mean, he grew up in Ashkenaz. He's recalling with nostalgia the destroyed Ashkenaz communities, as the Shoah was concluding, right? So comments, reactions, right? They lived in isolation. They sort of didn't have to answer to anyone, right? He says, there in Eastern Europe, Jewish people came into its own. It did not live like a guest in anyone else's house, right? They lived without reservation or disguise, outside their homes no less than within. What? How about us today? Could we say the same today?
Impossible today.
Yeah.
But I have a question if you refer to Herschel.
Yes.
Herschel says that nature is God, but things change. So how do you account for the conflict between the two theories?
You mean between Sephardic and Ashkenaz?
No, between the idea you brought in Herschel. So I thought
Yes.
Herschel said that nature, the rules of nature is God's, is all in the hands of God.
Mhm.
But yes, things change and nature changes. So how do you account the conflict between the two?
Well, so my answer on one foot is, and I'm happy to have you answer it too, is this is Heschel's nostalgia. And I've said it over and over, so sorry I keep repeating myself, right? Heschel is remembering his childhood, right? And like like when we love Fiddler on the Roof, right? The nostalgia of Fiddler on the Roof, right? If life was probably pretty difficult in the shtetl, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else really want to go back to shtetl life, right? But we love the idea of shtetl life, right? So same thing for Heschel, right? Loves this idea, right? The Jew didn't have to answer to anyone. The Jew was their own community, as Bob said, right? They sort of like we're a self-contained community living in isolation. Is that really what we're meant to be, though? I mean, are we really supposed to just close ourselves off? We were actually forced by non-Jewish rulers who wouldn't let Jews be citizens of their country, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
wouldn't let us take part in civic duties and go to university. So like, as beautiful as this nostalgia is, right, that we were able to come into our own, we also were pigeonholed and persecuted, always at the hands of the Tsar, and afraid that a massacre was going to come and destroy us.
Yeah, but there was no real complete harmony because part of the people in the shtetl wanted a secular education as well. It was not part of the philosophy of the shtetl.
Yeah. So Heschel was sort of the culmination of that, right? I don't know if you came on late, right? So Heschel, for the first 16 years
It's
of
my
his
first
life.
5 minutes. It's my first 5
Okay,
minutes.
welcome. Baruch haba, Baruch haba. Right, so the first 16 years of his life, Heschel was raised in a Hasidic house, no secular anything. He became a rabbi at 16. Then he began his secular education, and he is the convergence of them. This is his nostalgic remembrance of a community lost. Want to sort of move us on through this book, if that's okay. Anyone else, you're welcome to make comments. He makes some really interesting parallels and also contrasts between Sephardic and Ashkenazic. Want to just sort of we're going to sort of jump to another point. If you're interested, you can read it. Again, it's a short book. It's an easy book to read. Okay. Arda, we'll have you read one more section, and then we'll hand it over to Sherry, if that's okay.
Sure.
Sorry, I just got to find the place where I want to go. Okay. We're jumping a lot, so we're going to the chapter on Hasidim. And remember, he comes from a line of Hasidic rabbis. Okay, here we go. Let me just see where we're going to. Okay. This is his take on Hasidic Judaism, or Hasidism. Okay. Arda, then came.
Then came Rabbi Israel Baal Shem.
Oh.
And what?
Yeah, we couldn't hear you for a second. Now we can hear you, though.
Oh. In the 18th century, and brought heaven down to earth. He and his disciples, the Hasidim, banished melancholy from the soul and uncovered the ineffable delight of being a Jew.
How do you like that? Wait, can I just pause you for a second? They banished melancholy from the soul.
Yeah.
I wish I had that power. What do you think?
Well, but that's why they sing a lot.
Yeah. All right. God is. Go ahead, Arda.
Well, I think they worship God out of love, not out of fear.
Depends who you ask. Go ahead, Arda.
Not only the creator of earth and heaven, he is also the one who created delight and joy. And when we talk about the need of joy, says one of the great Hasidic thinkers, we do not mean the joy that is felt in fulfilling the commandments, for the ability of spontaneously feeling such a joy is a privilege of illustrious souls, and one cannot demand that every Jew be illustrious. What we mean is to be free of sadness. A Jew who does not rejoice in the fact of his being a Jew is ungrateful toward heaven. It is a sign that he has failed to grasp the meaning of having been born a Jew. Even lowly merriment has its ultimate origin in holiness. The fire of evil can be better fought with flames of ecstasy than through fasting and mortification.
Okay, we'll pause here. Sorry. The plow's coming by, so my animals are talking to the plow. Okay. Okay, comments or thoughts? Why do you think I wanted to read this paragraph in particular?
It's a question of attitude to life.
And also sometimes now I think it's hard to be Jewish.
Oh,
To
it's
keep-
always been hard.
I know, but now it's harder. You know, there was a time where being Jewish was easier. And, you know, that always happens. And then now we're going into someplace harder.
I would disagree. It's not harder to be Jew. It's easier to get out of being a Jew nowadays.
Totally agree. It's schwer to sein a Yid.
Can I translate that for somebody?
In some respects,
To be a Jew.
in some respects, it's easier. I mean, I can think back 30 years ago. I don't know if I would ever have talked about Hanukkah and other stuff in front of some non-Jews, but now I have many more people who I guess they want to learn about Jewish things, and every Friday I put the Shabbat candles on Facebook, and I have people that I grew up with who never would have known about candles 40 years ago, but now they say, I'm waiting to see those candles. So in that respect, I think it's easier.
Beautiful. I love that. Thank you. Yeah. So to me, the sentence that sort of grabbed me is a Jew who does not rejoice in the fact of their being a Jew is ungrateful toward heaven. It's a sign they fail to grasp the meaning of having been born a Jew. You know, it really means something. And there's one other line, Art, I'm not going to have you read the whole, again, there's like a lot. Again, he wrote a lot, but there's this one line, if you can see where my cursor is. What meaning is, if you can start with what, after 38. Yeah.
Okay. What meaning is there to the life of a Jew if it is not to acquire the ability to feel the taste of heaven? He who does not taste paradise in the performance of a precept in this world will not feel the taste of paradise in the world to come. And so the Jews began to feel life everlasting in a sacred melody and to absorb the Sabbath as a vivid anticipation of the life to come.
All right. What do you guys think about this? One who does not taste paradise in the performance of precept, meaning a mitzvah in this, or commandment in this world, will not feel the taste of paradise in the world to come.
To me, it means that it's in the grasp of everybody. You don't have to be a Talmud scholar or so on to appreciate life as a Jew. So
Yeah.
he's talking.
My doggies agree with you. Yeah, I think to me, it's also about, it's not just about doing the mitzvot, right? As Bob said before, and not everyone's going to be a tzaddik, a saint, right? Because that chapter was about like how to be a tzaddik, all right? But this is like to be a Jew, right? It's not just to follow the law, but we have to like feel it. Enjoy it. There's a joy. This is a continuation of that joy, right? We should taste paradise when we're doing a mitzvah, right? And then we'll sort of like mean more to us. And then I want to just jump to the end of this chapter. He makes an interesting statement. I think it's actually not the end of the book. Oh wait, no, it's the next chapter. Sorry. It's again. This is a short essay for him. It's from the Guard My Evil chapter. There we go. All right, Arda, read this and then we're going to turn it over. So if you know historically, Nebuchadnezzar was the Babylonian evil king in our eyes, who destroyed the first temple in Jerusalem 2,500 years ago. So this is Heschel is going to give you like Jewish history in 3 sentences. So Arda, if you want to read when Nebuchadnezzar
destroyed Jerusalem and set fire to the temple, our forefathers did not forget the revelation at Mount Sinai and the words of the prophets. Today, the world knows that what transpired on the soil of Palestine was sacred history from which mankind draws inspiration. A day may come when the hidden light of the East European era may be revealed.
Okay, remember, Israel didn't exist 1945. It was still Palestine.
Mhm.
And remember, this is in the really as the flames of the Shoah were still burning or had just been put out, right? And the Holocaust had ended, right? He's saying here, today the world knows that what transpired in Israel is sacred history from which all of humanity draws inspiration. A day may come when the hidden light of Eastern Europe here may be revealed. Do you feel like that's happened now, 80 years later?
Well, Zionism brought it to.
Yes, that's what I wanted to ask is like now 80 years later, with the revival of Eastern European Jewish life again, little at a time, with our maintaining a strong hold on Holocaust remembrance, on building Jewish life here, living, right? As Lynn said, it's a balance here, right? Anti-Semitism is rising, and yet we are free to practice Judaism here in America. You know, have in 80 years, has this come to fruition a little?
But you know,
It's come to fruition a little, but I think we're still struggling with it because of what's going on with all the attacks on synagogues, with all the anti-Semitism and anti-Semitism on the rise, not on the fall. And we need to be aware of this and be careful of this. You know, years ago, people had to practice in their own homes. They could not show their candles in the windows. Are we going to get to that again because of all the anti-Semitism going on in this country?
Well, you mentioned this country. The Pew report, I believe, shows that in the United States, anti-Semitism is on the rise, and where I am in Canada, it's on the decline.
Good. Well, let's keep it going. We're not going to answer it yet. So he writes this line. Marvin, we're going to turn it over to you in 2 minutes. Let me just read a couple short things and I'm going to give it over to you for a bigger thing. It's easier to appraise the beauty of traditional Jewish life than the revolutionary spirituality of modern Jews. The Jew of older days often overlooked this world because of his preference for the other world. Okay. I really wanted to read. A world has vanished, wherever that is. There we go. A world has vanished. All that remains is a sanctuary hidden in the realm of spirit. We of this generation are still holding the key. Unless we remember, unless we unlock it, the holiness of ages will remain a secret of God. We of this generation are still holding the key to the sanctuary, which is also the shelter of our own deserted souls. If we mislay the key, we shall elude ourselves. In this hour, we the living are the people of Israel. The tasks begun by the patriarchs and prophets continued by their descendants are now entrusted to us. We are either the last Jews or those who will hand over the entire past to generations to come. We will either forfeit or enrich the legacy of ages. This is a pretty strong statement. Heschel's getting really, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think it's we have to all thank you, not just the religious people, which I'm not minimizing, but also to the secular. Like I think somebody like Bialik, who with his poetry made it possible for Herzl to be heard. And so many authors after him, like Agnon and so on. So we owe a lot for the understanding, and the need for Judaism is a combination between literature and the religious world.
So Marvin, I'm going to turn it over to you. We're going to read before the last. You turn it over, one quick comment. Yes. With the closing of Forest Hills Jewish Center, which is where my USY days were, and where many of our seminary leaders came from, and which had the most gorgeous ark you have ever seen in your life. This paragraph really resonates to me.
Thank you. Yeah, Bob Leeson.
I think he's right in that we were at a crossroads there, but I think it also tends to show the importance of U.S. Jewry and not the exclusive, that Judaism is not the exclusive property of Israel.
I agree.
And that Israel's strengths come from the strengths of the U.S. Jews. Without the support of U.S. Judaism, I don't think Israel would be in the position that it is. I don't think it may be possible that it wouldn't exist at all. And that the spread of having our assets in more than one place is important.
Very important. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
And accepting the Jewish population in all of its various iterations is important for the survival of Judaism, and that it's not the exclusive property of the most observant.
Amen. Beautiful. Remember, Heschel's writing, he's only been in America for a couple of years. He's only been in America during World War II, right? So, it's before my time. So I can't talk about how America and Jewry was in America in the early 1940s. He's writing at this point. I'm wondering if he would rewrite some of this stuff, 30 years later before his death. Right. We're different, right? America's different. And you're right, 100%. The support that America's provided to the establishment and building up of what Israel is today is crucial. And the importance of having Jewish communities around the world. I'm actually leading a session next Monday with our teens, where we're sort of like debating things. It's 2 Jews, 3 opinions for the sake of argument. And we're going to talk about, like, should we all live in one place? Should all Jews be in Israel? Is important to me in other places, sort of what the idea of Jewish homeland, and starting with Herzl in the late 1800s and the Uganda proposal. Should we have taken Uganda? Should we have been like Reform Jews who said, we're, some Reform Jews, not Abba Hillel Silver, but some Reform Jews said, like, the Israel for us now is where we are living, and that's our Israel, or is it that the physical Eretz Yisrael for us, and sort of debating which way you would have gone in the time and why.
Why they call the synagogue temple.
Yeah. So Marvin, I want you to finish up. We're just going to read, these are the last 4 or 5 paragraphs of Heschel. So I'm just going to have you sort of read it through and finish us this essay, and then we'll do a little bit of reflection. So Marvin, it's going to start with mankind. Remember, he's, not so gender neutral from, 80 years ago. Mankind.
Mankind does not have the choice of religion and neutrality. Irreligion is not opiate, but poison. Our energies are too abundant for living indifferently. We are in need of an endless purpose to absorb our immense power if our souls are not to run amok. We are either the ministers of the sacred or slaves of evil. To be a Jew is to hold one's soul clean and open the stream of endless striving so that God may not be ashamed of his creation. Judaism is not a quality of the soul, but spiritual life. With souls we are born, spirit we must acquire. Judaism is the track of God in the wilderness of oblivion. By being what we are, namely Jews, by attuning our own yearning to the lonely holiness in this world, we will aid humanity more by any particular service we may render. We are Jews as we are men. The alternative to our Jewish existence is spiritual suicide, disappearance, and not conversion into something else. Judaism has allies, partners, but no substitute. It is not a handmaiden of civilization, but its touchstone. We do not live in a void. We never suffer from a fear of roaming about the emptiness of time. We own the past and are hence not afraid of what is. Not seeing anymore.
Sorry, I'm reading from my book. I didn't know you had a change there. Do you want to
Yeah,
start the sentence again and then I'll flip it?
We own the past and are hence not afraid of what is to be. We remember where we came from. We are endowed with a consciousness of being involved in a history that transcends the interest and the glories of particular dynasties and empires. We were summoned and cannot forget it, winding the clock of eternal history. We are taught to feel the knots of life in which the trivial is intertwined with the sublime. There is no end to our experience of the intense, stern import of the dangerous grandeur of the divine earnestness of human life. Our blossoms may be crushed, but we are upheld by the faith that comes from beneath our roots. Our life is beset with difficulties, yet it is never devoid of meaning. The feeling of futility is absent from our souls. Our existence is not in vain. There is a divine earnestness about our life. This is our dignity. To be invested with dignity means to represent something more than oneself. The gravest sin for a Jew is to forget what he represents.
Okay, we're actually not done yet. That's the second to last paragraph of his essay. I wanted to just pause for it. You read a lot, Marvin, and we could probably take like a sentence and spend 10 minutes on each of these sentences. Anything sort of stick out? So to me, the last couple sentences were really moving. So a couple that sort of stuck out to me. We were summoned and cannot forget it, winding the clock of eternal history. We are taught to feel the knots of life in which the trivial is intertwined with the sublime. It's true, right? I think so anyway, right? Our life is beset with difficulties, yet never devoid of meaning. Our existence is not in vain. We have dignity. To be invested with dignity means to represent something more than oneself. To me, that's like what being a Jew is, right? That we represent more than oneself. The gravest sin for a Jew is to forget what we represent.
Yeah.
Other things stick out before we get to the last paragraph? Yep.
Yeah, he talks about the importance of faith.
Mm-hmm. Okay, here we go, Marvin. This is the end of the essay.
We are God's stake in human history. We are the dawn and the dusk, the challenge and the test. How strange to be a Jew and to go astray on God's perilous errands. We have been offered as a pattern of worship and as a prey for scorn, but there is more still in our destiny. We carry the gold of God in our souls to forge the gate for the kingdom. The time for the kingdom may be far off, but the task is plain, to retain our share in God's in spite of peril and contempt. There is a war to wage against the vulgar, against the glorification of the absurd, a war that is incessant, universal. Loyal to the presence of the ultimate in the common, we may be able to make it clear that man is more than man, that in doing the finite, he may perceive the infinite.
Man is more than man. Again, we'll say human, right? Human beings are more than human beings, right? We are more than we are. The task is plain.
But
Yeah, Bob?
aren't we more than we are with a free choice?
I have a problem with the first sentence in that paragraph.
We are God's stake in human history, that one?
Yeah, and we are the dawn and the dusk, the challenge and the test. Wow. That's um
Responsibility.
yeah, but
Responsibility. Yeah.
we don't even know if we're the only world.
Right. I also, I'm sort of framing this, and maybe I'm reading too much. I didn't see a lot of scholarly work on this. He is writing this as someone who fled Nazi Germany in America while everything that he knew was destroyed, right? So he's carrying the legacy of literally millions, right? Of how he was raised, right? And he's literally writing as the flames of the Holocaust are sort of burning out. So that's how I'm taking this, right? He's writing these are dramatic statements, but he's living in time of trauma. Not sure what's going to happen with the world, right? The evils, the evil of the world has shown its head and done horrific things. So that's how I'm reading this statement. To me, that's like the most moving line. We are God's stake in human history. We are the dawn, the dust, the challenge, and the test. To me, I take that as a like a rallying cry that we can't just sit back idly. We are compelled to make things right in this world. But I'm open to other comments. And I see, Bob, how you're questioning it, and the fact that, right, we're just one people, and we're one people in a group of people, and as you say, we don't even know what it perhaps is across the universe. Other comments, thoughts?
Something precious. We are carrying something precious
No
that
question.
is fast disappearing.
Yes. Yes. Other comments, thoughts?
It's our responsibility. Keep it going.
And there's also a plea to be a step higher, not in a primitive, vulgar world.
Yeah.
It's relying on our inner strength, spiritual strength.
But I think we
Yes.
also have the responsibility to adapt to the modern world and not just retain what was in the shtetl.
And so I think this is Heschel grappling with he's a shtetl boy, even though he grew up in Warsaw, which is not a shtetl. I mean, it's a cosmopolitan city, but his family grew up in the shtetl, right? And he's now living in America and sort of grappling with, he lives in two worlds. He lives in two worlds, right? What am I going to do? One of my worlds doesn't exist anymore. I'm out of place. How am I going to carry that message forward? And what are we going to do? That he feels that legacy that he carries on. By the way, he carried it on very well. Incredibly. I don't know if anyone could have carried it on better than him. So I want to pause here, sort of a wrap up for the class. Thank you. Number one, thank you for learning with me. Thank you for our readers. What I'd like to do next time is do one more. We're in January. One last January Heschel. And what I want to do is, we haven't looked at his classic work, at least this year. We looked other years, but at the Sabbath. So we want to look specifically on Heschel's book, The Sabbath, and his approach to what Shabbat means to the Jew and what Shabbat means to the world. So we're going to do that next time, and then we're going to shift. Then it's going to be like the week of Tu B'Shvat, and we'll do some Tu B'Shvat the follow in 2 weeks from now. So thank you for learning with me. Sorry, I know there was some internet stuff on my end and everybody else's end, so I think the storm doesn't like the internet, or the other way around. But hope everybody's staying warm and staying safe. Thanks for learning. And if anyone wants, it's called The Earth is the Lord's. If you want, I can send you the link. Whoa, this is my version. This is like the 1950s version of it. I think this was like 64 when it was published.
And you weren't even
Combo.
born. You weren't
Yeah,
even around.
I looked on Amazon. They sell this version for like $70. Yeah, an oldie but a goodie. Yeah, yeah. All right. Have a good day, everybody.